Welcome to Wadsworth History on Film, a program presented by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to record the oral history for Wadsworth for posterity. I'm Caesar Carino, your host, and back by popular demand, and I have to explain why by popular demand, is Joe Klosterman. Now, everyone knows Joe Klosterman, and everyone who knows him knows he's somewhat of a shy, retiring person, but we've had so many requests for him to come to bring some of the pictures that only Joe has, and he has consented once again to come, and we're just grateful, Joe. I know that you keep on saying that people are getting tired of you, but if they were tired of you, they wouldn't be asking for you all the time. And today we're going to have somewhat of a show and tell, because these are pictures which Joe has, and many people have never seen them, and they're so good. And particularly because you probably took them, probably there's a story behind them. How many pictures in your lifetime that you worked at the banner, at the, whatever we call it now?
I wouldn't even estimate how many I'd have to stop and figure out how many a week and how many, because I took pictures for the banner for 45 years, so it added up to quite a few.
Is there a face in Wadsworth that you haven't seen?
No, I've been everywhere and talked to everyone, and the thing that I enjoyed the most is that I was welcome anywhere.
Not only welcome, you were sought after all the time.
Well, that's right. They'd come down to the house after me to come and take pictures, and they still do. I still take pictures for the paper off and on, and it's a wonderful feeling to be able to walk into a room and everybody appreciates the fact that you're there, because you're doing something for them, that you give them their spot in the sun they enjoy.
That's right. You took pictures of our class reunion every 5 years. And I can remember, as you were trying to retire during our 45th and 50th, well, actually, the 50th you were retired and you didn't take our pictures, but for the 45th you did. But you were almost retiring at that time. So we sent some of our best negotiators down to talk with you, and you finally came up. And then when you came into, and I've forgotten where we had that, I think it was over in Akron somewhere, where we had that, when you came in, we sent them out to greet you, and now there were no men involved. You understand that, Joe?
That's the best kind of greeting.
That's the best kind to greet you. And they greeted you just warmly, and you came in. Joe, you know, talking about pictures, I suspect that pictures occur all the time, or stories occur all the time, and therefore there are pictures. Do you remember any really bizarre kinds of pictures that you've had to take in your lifetime, and at odd hours in the morning and things of that night or whatever? Do you remember anything?
No.
You know, there's a rumor going around. I don't know if this is true or not, but there's a rumor going around that somebody in Wadsworth shot a monkey or an ape or a baboon or something. Is that true? And you had to take a picture of it?
The story of it, and about the only one that ever resurrected that was Bob Tubasing.
Bob Tubasing,
Bob
he would,
Tubasing
yes.
was in my class in school, and he spent his life as an artist up in Parma, I think it was.
In Cleveland, but what a tremendous artist he is.
The Cleveland area. But anyway, I told him the story once that there was my dad and I were living together after my mother died in 1954, I think. And anyway, my dad had some drinking buddies down at the Echo Grill, and one of them had been out hunting that day, and for some strange way, he ran across a monkey and he shot the monkey. And
you're in Wadsworth?
Pardon?
In Wadsworth?
Well, in the Wadsworth area, it had to be. I didn't talk to him. I wouldn't. He sat and drank for a long time at the Echo Grill after he shot the monkey, and he was talked into coming to my house to have me photograph the monkey, him and the monkey, with as a trophy, but he knocked on the door at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was fast asleep. My dad went out and talked to him, but he was drunk, and I didn't want any part of him, so I never went down to see what it was all about. But Bob Tubasing drew a composite of his impressions of Wadsworth, and he had a monkey in the picture, and nobody could figure out what it was, and the monkey came from the story. That story.
Evidently, someone had it as a pet or a circus or something like that.
Well, it might have been, because there was Beachy Chupa. Do you remember him? Baggio Chupa. He had a pet monkey, but I'm sure he didn't, because Beachy would have been pretty hostile if someone had shot his monkey.
You bet. Beachy is a big man too.
Yeah, he was a big man, and
he wouldn't have let that one go by quietly.
No,
and rightfully so.
Anyway, this was in the early 50s, and I never went down to see what the man had or anything. I got mad because he sounded drunk, and I didn't want any part of talking.
Wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and take a picture of a man who shot a monkey. A lot more important things. We're going to show a lot of these pictures, and the very first one I want to show today is the one that you brought, and of course these are treasured pictures of the Wadsworth Police Force, and I'm going to try to get that on there just so that everyone can see it. And we have several of the names there. And we're not going to have to.
You can't see them.
I can't see them that far away.
Well, let me
see if you can name some of those people. Right
here. Don Hartman there.
Don Hartman, now retired, lives out there west of town.
I can't see that far anymore. My glasses.
Well, let's see who the next one is.
My glasses don't work that well.
That's Byers. Byers is right there. The second person is Byers. And then
Burroughs, I think, is there.
George Bursa. Sheriff's Department.
Yeah.
Now, and here's Wendell Brink. He's no longer on the police department. Right there is Wendell Brink. See, where's Wendell Brink? Right there. There's Wendell. And then the last person is Mercy. I can't see who he is right there.
Yeah, that's
then we have John Gehring, now retired, and let's see, Riggs is right here, and then we have the dispatchers. This is Linda Gehring Bowers, Nancy Bell Bowes, and Pat Bordak, and Janet Hulsinger. We're not going to name all of these people, but I just thought that we would have some pictures of the police department, and that would have been probably about 30 years ago.
It was, in the 60s, I would say.
60s, maybe about 30 years ago. And this one of High Street, tell us a little bit about High Street and where this picture was taken. As a matter of fact, it's looking west. Well, it can't be looking...
looking north on High Street.
North on High Street, yeah.
North on High Street, about where Maple Street is, where the business district ends, and looking north. But that was taken probably around 1910.
1910? It's a long time ago. This one is an extraordinarily good picture of...
That's looking north on Main Street from the depot. This is the railroad depot right here, and
where is the railroad depot?
This is the business district on the east side. That's the gully there, where the gully is still there, being filled in now. But the road was pretty muddy there.
Well, I'll say. When would that have been taken, Joe?
Oh, that had to be taken in the 1800s, but I don't know. 1800s. I suppose.
Wow. Now here we have the College Street Park, as it were.
Yeah, there was a sort of a little park in the middle of the street, and these are streetcar tracks. The streetcar came into Wadsworth and it went all the way down to Joe Bender's restaurant down here, and then backed up into
North Park.
North Park. It had a stopping place there, and people bought their, or they waited at Brenny's drugstore for the streetcar to come in, and it would back up. And Paul Ryder was always wondering how they threw the switch there to back up, because if you backed up, you'd come back the same track that you did. But anyway.
How did they throw the switch? Does the
Well,
motorman get out and do it?
Evidently, they had to get out, either that or it had a spring in it that every time you went over it, why it went over the other way. But then they had to change their trolley too that brought in the electricity.
That's
So
right, the trolley
I
was
think
above.
The motorman probably had to get out.
Now, that one also would have been in the probably the very, very early
That was,
teens or 20s.
That one was, I'm sure it was early 1900s, yeah.
In the early
Yeah,
1900s.
the streetcar came in 1907, and Joe Bender, because none of the buildings there are the same anymore, even the brick apartment building that was there.
There.
is the
This
same.
picture is in the mid-30s, late 30s,
Well,
and isn't it?
yeah, probably, yeah. The streetcar tracks are gone, and
This is High Street going north.
no, College Street. That's
Oh, I'm sorry, College Street,
That's
yes,
the
going
same
west.
as,
That's the
same
same
as
one.
Same as the previous picture.
That's right,
But,
except that it's about 50 years later.
Yeah, well, yeah, it would have been, yeah, you can tell by the cars
By the
there.
cars, yeah. There's a
it was
37
in the
Chevy
la-
in there.
In the late 30s, I would say. But all the buildings are different. They tore down everything all the way down there. And Mike's Restaurant is there now, but Don Merriman had a gas station right there, and he was the last one to have his gas pumps right on the
street. Mm-hmm.
And he put up a big fight to keep his gas pumps on the street.
And knowing Don, he would certainly have been
Yeah.
very
yes, he was.
adroit in that. That's an excellent picture. Now, this picture we have had before, but this is such a good photograph of the old Union Schoolhouse.
Yeah.
And this was prior to 5, 6?
No, the Union Schoolhouse was, it was torn down, I think, around 1903 or something, but it was built in 1869, and it had, I think, 6 rooms in it, and they had it partly up, and a big windstorm came along and blew the north wall down on it, and they had to rebuild again. But anyway, it stood where the present junior high
or the
school
middle
is
school
now.
is.
And it was a wonderful place for the photographer, Captain Wilbaugh, to go
Oh,
up and
to go up there,
photograph the
yes.
whole town from it.
This is an extraordinary picture, and it's a picture of the
Octagon School.
Church, the Octagon School.
Octagon Church, and it was they had a real fine educator here in Wadsworth in the 1840s, I think it was, and his name was McGregor, and he taught in that school building, and then they moved it over to where the Trinity Church is now, and
Where was it before?
It it had been where the A&P, where what store is it there now?
Well,
right opposite the churches there.
Right across the street from the Trinity Church, where the CVS is now, the drugstore is.
Yeah.
Right, and they moved it across the street then.
They moved it.
And then that became a church, did it not?
And it, they
became a
called it
church.
the Octagon
The Octagon Church.
yeah.
And here we have some people, and I'm going to have to take
And
a
that's
19.
track team. Well, it had to be in the 1950s or
No, 1940s, 1945, 46, 47, yes.
Is
I
that
can
what
name
it-
some of these people, yes.
Yeah.
We have McAdams, Pisanelli, Piranhas, Gehring, DeColo,
Well, the reason I
Alan.
included it because Dick
Krause.
Krause was a teacher.
Dick Krause was the teacher, so
Yeah,
it'd
he
have to
was
be.
a teacher for a short time, and he was a fine teacher.
Oh, he surely was. I had him. Dick Krause is right there. Dick Krause has been in Wadsworth since 1945, and at least one of his sons lives here. So this was probably taken in 1945, 46, somewhere in that area. And I'm going to name some of these other people too. Well, maybe I'm not going to name some of these other people.
That's ahead of your time then in school.
No, oh no. This is right during the time that I was in school.
Yeah, you graduated in
48.
1948.
Yeah. So this would have been in the mid from mid 40s.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was that old because I took it and I wasn't here.
And then 10 years later, or 10 years earlier,
Earlier,
this one-
1939.
and boy, you would know these people because they were your classmates, were they not?
Yeah, those are cheerleaders of
Who were the cheerleaders? Who's the one over here to the far
Well,
left?
Evelyn Overholt.
Well, she's on the other side.
She's
right there.
right there, yeah. Evelyn Overholt,
Yeah.
Pauline Shank,
Right there.
Betty Standen,
Benny Standen and
I
Cora-
can't see
Cora
Caesar
Ford, isn't it?
Cora Ford.
It's
She's
Cora
the
Ford.
mayor's wife. Yeah,
Cora Ford Henson.
yeah. And 1939, we had the best football team that we'd had for 15, 20 years. We won the Western Reserve League championship.
Now look at that field out there. Of course, we didn't have a stadium of any kind.
Well, we built the stadium in 1939 we tried to get it done for the centennial.
Yes.
And I remember I had a job after I graduated. Joe Laparo and I were working, bolting the seats together on the east side of the stadium. Are they going to tear that part down? They're tearing the west side
west
down.
side, yeah.
But anyway, we were bolting them down, and we worked day and night to finish it for the centennial around 4th of July. And Joe Laparo let a wrench slip, and he broke his nose while he was tightening a bolt. And I was so tired and sleepy from working all night that I never got to the centennial.
You didn't get to the centennial. You got it ready, but you weren't there.
Yeah.
This picture is an excellent one of an old store that's no longer around.
Well, they called those the sheep sheds. They were, I think the National Hotel stood on the corner, the northwest corner of the square, where Accurate Business is now and where the Myers Block is. And the Myers Block was built in 1905, and somebody owned the property, and they put 5 little stores in there, and they called it the sheep sheds because they were such tiny little stores. And
That's an interesting thing. We've not had that picture before.
Yeah,
We've had the picture of the hospital on before, but we are so disappointed that they actually destroyed that. That no longer is there.
Yeah.
Nothing is there of the old hospital.
Yeah.
But that was the match shop.
It started in the early 1920s, I think. It was a stable at one time, and
For the
mat shop donated it to the city. And
Started in 1920, 21, and the first 2 people born in it were Harriet Crawford and Bob.
you remember that?
Bob Clapper. Bob Clapper moved to Worcester. His mother was Marie Clapper, and she was, her maiden name was Simmons. The Simmons family lived in Western Star. And
I remember them.
Yeah, they have several sisters here. They had, Mager, Mrs. Mager. Mrs. Santee. Palmer Santee's wife, and her name will come to me in a second. And Bud Simmons was around, Ruth Hollinger, Leva.
But the hospital building had been built during World War I as a a hotel for employees of the match company.
Oh, is that right?
And that's why at all the individual rooms upstairs, it was a stable in the basement for the horses they used for hauling stuff to the depot. But
Oh, the upstairs was
the upstairs
for a hotel.
the individual rooms. That's why it was so wonderful for a hospital. It had individual rooms on the second floor.
And the second and third floors.
First
and second,
first and second floors, yeah.
This beautiful, beautiful old home is what the Sonestein House, isn't it?
It was on the corner, southeast corner of Lyman Street.
Lyman Street and
Lyman
Broad Street.
And they tore it down to build the Ford garage. The Ford garage stood there.
But this was the Sonestein House, wasn't it?
Sonnenstein House. And at one time they were talking about putting the streetcar track behind, have it run behind where the post office is, but it came out, the streetcar came out on the other side of, on the east side of the old post office, not the new post office. But
Right.
it came out there instead because they couldn't negotiate with Sonnenstein and agree on a price, I suppose.
This is a beautiful old car, and I don't know what kind it is, but it had to be about 2, 3, 4, somewhere
But
in there.
yeah, real early 1900s.
And who's the driver there? Do we know him?
Well, his name was Chandler, I believe, and he lived in the South End on
Westburgie?
Westburgie. It was, yes. He lived on Westburgie.
His daughter-in-law was a seamstress. And I don't know what his son's name was, but she was a lovely, lovely soul. And we have had this picture too, but this is such
That's
a good picture.
E.J. Young.
As a matter of fact,
if you read that, it'll tell you.
said that E.J. Young was one of the founders of the Ohio Match Company and the Ohio Salt Company and Boxboard Company. And he built this mansion for his family on Broad Street on what is now the site of the Methodist Church in 1903. Young started out as a school teacher, but in 1891 began working on the improvement of the injector, and from there he got involved with other Ohio companies. Before the Young Mansion was built in pioneer times, Levi Blakesley Tannery stood on this site. Young died in 1933. Beautiful, beautiful old home. And they
claimed it had 13 bathrooms.
13 bathrooms. That's nice. That ought to be enough, except when it came time for cleaning time. This picture is one that you can probably tell by heart because it was the old news banner, or the banner press, and you started with it as the Wadsworth News and Wadsworth Banner Press, right? Then it became the news banner. And who are those people?
Edgar Bell.
Edgar Bell, now
Junior
dead.
Parker.
Junior
Tony
Parker.
Millici.
Tony Millici.
Howard Lightfoot.
Howard Lightfoot.
Quentin Keel. Sue Morrison. Jack Anderson. Grace Moss. Red Smith. Fern Abrams. John Miller, who was the editor, and Bonnie Rosenberg.
Now, of those, about all but 3 or 4 are all gone, right?
They're all practically all dead.
Yeah, Tony's still alive. And,
Tony Millici is still living. Junior Parker's still alive. Jack Anderson, I'm not sure of, but everybody else.
Bonnie's still alive too, isn't she?
No, Bonnie.
No, Bonnie's gone?
Died
oh, boy.
2 years ago, I think.
Wow. And the building, these people we don't know because this is Civil War.
Well, it's after the Civil War.
After the Civil
It
War.
was the Wadsworth Militia, I think, Company G. They formed it in 1880s, and that's the Wadsworth. Wait a minute. National Guard. It was a National Guard unit, and the building was where the fire department building
Is right
is
now, on
and
Lyman Street.
they used it for high school graduations. It had a huge room on the second floor, and it was an assembly room where people would meet and hold their meetings.
Do you have any idea when it was torn down, Joe?
I don't know, around 1900, I suppose I don't think it lasted
Too long.
too awful long.
And here's another picture of the militia, and this is in front of a house, but so what street is that?
That was on Good Lord. High Street, I think it was. It was a group of the militia, but I don't know what year or what group, but it shows the condition of the street there. It was all mud and wooden sidewalks, and they didn't use cement for sidewalks.
No, they used wood. They had a lot of wood, but now it's cheaper to buy cement.
Well, I remember reading in the old banners about how when they put sidewalks up Injector Hill, they went up the railroad track to Silver Creek, and evidently there was a sawmill there or something, and they got a load of lumber and coasted down on the railroad track and brought the lumber down to Main Street, and they built the sidewalks
on Injector Hill from Silver Creek.
Injector Hill from because there was a huge woods, Everhard's Woods.
Everhard's Woods,
and,
right.
They had an oak tree forest there, I think, and I remember when I was a small boy, there were huge stumps. We used to crawl up on them and sit there and wonder what kind of trees they came from. But there was a sawmill down there on the end of where Hosels lived, right across from the Barefoot,
right.
On the curve on Berge Street. But that was before my time. I know people that claim that they remember that sawmill, but I don't remember it. I remember there was a pile of sawdust there but there was a pond there where they could have gotten water for their boiler and all. But anyway, that's where they got most of their wood.
That whole area was wooded at one time.
Well, that was 25 acres. That's where the Wadsworth Development Company and Sib Strimple, I think, was instrumental in that. But anyway, the first thing they put in was, I think, the Remington plant, I believe, and then they put in that place that grinds up foundry sand. And I can't remember what the name. They've changed their name several times.
Is that Eggleston?
I don't know what the name.
I didn't realize.
But anyway, the only thing I remember is that they have a sign that says this is a smoke-free.
Smoke-free.
Smoke-free working. They don't allow smoking in the place, but. That's the only thing I remember of their sign.
That would be right across the street from where you lived when you were growing up.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right across the street.
Well, the whole woods was across the street. We used to go looking for mushrooms there when I was small, and you could get baskets full of them there because of all the dead wood and branches and everything.
We just saw High Street. Now, look at Broad Street.
That's Broad Street looking east from where the
square is.
The Citizens Bank building, if people remember. What is it now? It's
well, it has a lot of stores in it.
It has, it's a developed place. But anyway, that's looking east, and it's the same group that has been in the, I suppose, National Guard. But they were either in a parade, Memorial Day parade, or heading for the depot to go somewhere.
Now, if the late Art Baldwin were marching that parade down the street, they would have had straighter lines than
Well, they had to avoid the horse manure
that's the other thing.
And the mud, I think.
I think it's so significant that we have these men. These were Wadsworth people. They were veterans of the Civil War.
Civil War.
And this had to be after 1865, obviously.
That was 1912, I think, when they put the Soldiers Monument in. And it wasn't a World War I soldier, but he was I guess he celebrated Civil War and the Spanish-American War, but they moved him down to the cemetery.
I think that if we can get a closer view of these, every single one of those fellows has a mustache, a really, really big mustache, and they all seem to be dressed the same way, and it must have been the vogue at that time. And I imagine that their mothers and wives and so forth said, well, you know, these people are never going to amount to anything because they all have mustaches, just as we used to say that kids who had long hair wouldn't amount to anything. And now they are the leaders of our country, and these people were, of course, the leaders of their country. I like this picture particularly because it has the Wadsworth Marble Works. We have not had a picture ever of the Wadsworth Marble Works on the program.
No. I think that was on College Street.
On College Street.
Yeah,
yes.
you don't know different, do you? Because
No,
because there was a monument works on High Street, except that was a cement block building, and this is a wooden building, I think. But anyway, it's a carpenter's crew, and it scares the daylights out of me to see those carpenters up there with nothing to hang on to, putting a slate roof on a house as high as that was. But they had a real crew on the house, because nowadays they don't have anywhere near that many people working on it.
No.
But they had to saw everything by hand.
They surely did. This old building is one that I think that deserves some credit, because it stood where the Citizens Bank now stands. Is that correct, Joe?
It was on the
southwest corner.
Southwest corner of the square, and it didn't run all the way out to. It didn't then run all the way out to the street. Here's the street right here, and there was a area in there where the building was. But it was Pardee's store, and one of the first. It had to be in the 1820s or 1830s, and it was one of the first stores in Wadsworth. I don't know. I thought there was another one up on Broad Street at one time, but this is the only picture I have of any of them.
That the significance there is that there's absolutely nothing else on that street now.
No, that's right.
Now it is the main street.
Yeah.
Here's one of Joe Bender. And we've talked about Joe Bender time and again in his restaurant, and this is the actual picture of Joe Bender.
Yeah, he was he had a newsstand at the end of, well, not at the end, in the middle of
the middle of the block.
Middle of the block on
the north
College
side.
Street, on the north side of College Street.
If we could pick up a closer view of Joe coming right out. You see, there he is, right there. Right there's Joe.
Yeah.
Joe Bender right there.
Yeah.
He was a younger man then, but he always looked the same. He had a big bushy head of hair and kind of sharp features in his face, and a stentorian voice. Just a very, very good dramatist.
And he was born right alongside the Mennonite, the old
Right.
What is it now?
It's the Episcopalian church now.
Episcopalian church, but he was born, and they tore his house down back when they remodeled the whole block there. But he was a real estate dealer, and he made a lot of money. He owned houses all over, everywhere. During the Depression, he would rent you a house just for enough to pay the interest on it, or the taxes, I guess. He never ran anybody out because they didn't pay their rent.
No, he's a good man. This picture shows what appliances used to be, what they used to look like: washing machines and stoves and lamps and things of that nature. And do you think this was
it's Curtis
Electric?
Electric store.
not Bixler.
Oh, but it could have been Bixler, West Bixler, but that isn't West Bixler.
Well, no, I don't see West Bixler in that picture. And I knew West Bixler.
Yeah, well, Old West.
I mean Old West. I'm talking about Old West.
You know Old West.
He was Wesley Bixler. This picture of the, here we have the building is still standing, and it's changed many, many times. And the Wadsworth Hardware, actually, it'll be over here, the Wadsworth Hardware and Iron Company was where the
Well, it was where Prince Keller and Coon,
right.
Keller
Prince
and
Keller and Coon.
Coons
This is on Main Street.
eventually, and the alley was right. It's where Love's Market is right now.
And that big building still stands.
Yes, and the Oddfellows had meeting rooms upstairs.
Right.
They had. Is it on there or not? Let me see. Yeah, they had the initials up there.
IOOF, International Order of
Yeah,
Odd
and I told
Fellows.
you I've got those at home yet.
You have those at home.
I saved them when they threw them away. They took down the.
We had talked many times about Gross's Meat Market, and we do have a picture of Morris Worley in there. And we've talked about him on the program, and John Gross, and Cal Welker, and Harvey Gross. And we've talked about all of those people. And I think that if we really wanted to show what meat markets were like in those days, we would have to show on the other side here, where we have the hogs standing, hanging right there. The hogs.
Yeah, you could get any cut you wanted out of a hog.
And no refrigeration. And this would have been, now we had Bill Gross on, it was his father. And this would have, and Bill died not too long ago at age probably close to 80, wasn't he? So, and this would have been 75 years ago at least.
Yeah.
That picture was taken. Now we have some South End merchants here, and I think that we have talked about every single one of these people, but we never had a picture of Harold Heiberger, who was right there. He had a bit of a deformity.
He had polio, and he walked with crutches all the time.
Nicest person in the world.
He was real fine.
And he was one of the persons who started the Little League in Wadsworth. Yeah,
he was always athletically inclined, and he was manager of a lot of the semi-pro teams around Wadsworth. He was interested in baseball, but anyway, he ran the beverage store in the South End. He ran Heiberger's Market there, where on the corner where what's there now?
Well, there's a parking lot right now.
Yeah, they tore it down. A bunch of Amishmen tore that building down, and it was a big 3-story building, and right on the corner. But
next to him is Gaylord West. We have to get the picture of Gaylord West in there. The bald-headed man.
Yeah, he ran the Cardinal Market in the South End for.
And then Ned Long, and Ned Long had a.
Well, I think he had a meat market.
Meat market. Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure now. Meat market, grocery store, or something. And Jimmy Vincent is on the Vincents owned the store on the corner that was Kreitz's restaurant for a long time.
And we had on this program Woody Vincent.
Woodrow.
Yeah, Woodrow.
Yeah, that was his older brother.
Older brother, right.
But Barris Burbeck, who was later mayor of Wadsworth and postmaster, he owned the store there when I was growing up. The Vincent started it, and then Barris Burbeck ran it for a long time.
For a long time, right. This picture, I think, is significant because we don't know a whole lot about that company that supposedly existed here in Wadsworth. This is
They built bus bodies.
Built bus bodies. What was the name of it? Do you remember?
It says right on the front of it. I don't know.
Okay, it says the Summers Auto and Carriage Company, Wadsworth, Ohio, and is written by hand with this beautiful, beautiful script. And if anyone knows anything about that company, be sure they would like to hear about it, because I'd like to have that bus right now.
It had to be in the very early 30s.
Long before, Joe, before you were born even, and that's what, 78 years ago. This was the Allen and Hartzell Company. These were the people. Street. And I don't recognize any of those people. This is long before my time as well, but that had to be probably prior to 1920, wouldn't you say?
I think so.
But I'm sure that there are people out there who would know some of those people, and if anyone does, we surely would like to hear from those people. This picture is one of my favorites because it says on here, a day's delivery of hardware from the Prince and Orr Hardware Company, Wadsworth, Ohio, September 11th, 1913. If you needed some hardware, you couldn't call them on the telephone, could you? Because they probably didn't have the telephone.
They had a telephone,
They had a telephone.
back then, I think. Yeah, the Star Telephone Company. But that's that same building that we showed in one of the first buildings on the west side of the street.
And one-day delivery. No,
One day
certainly not like the pizza
deliver
place in
by
30
horse,
minutes,
yeah.
or we pay you back, or something like that. This one, I think, has some value to our viewers because it shows something that doesn't exist anymore. What was that?
Well, I think the Wadsworth Enterprise, but also this was the store on the corner of the southeast corner of the square.
Right.
And none of those places were handicap accessible because
sure
they
weren't.
all went up real high steps to get into it. But
The building is still there, but not one of those. There's a jewelry store, a clothing store, a shoe
yeah.
store, and they're all
Well,
gone.
Who was it? Mark Nielsen had
Mark
a
Nielsen
jewelry
had a jewelry store
at
there,
one time.
and then-
And Ladrick had his shoe store there for years and years. But it says the Wadsworth Enterprise, this sign here says the Wadsworth Enterprise was up in the second floor, and that's way before
Our
anything.
time.
Yeah.
We actually had the person who was in this float on our program. That would have been Esther Melvin Daniels, and
Yeah.
she was the
Queen.
1939 Queen.
The
And she's on a
Centennial Queen, yeah.
She's only 14 or 15 years old at the time.
Yeah.
She was pretty, and she was nice, and she was our queen. This one is a good one. This shows the picture of the what? First?
The Centennial, what is it? Sesquicentennial
Sesquicentennial.
Committee. In 1976 it was. It's the committee and the council that organized everything. But,
From this side, from over here, that's Tony Perry and Mike Jones, John Hanna, presently our mayor, and Jim Hawkins. This is
Bill Lyre.
Bill Lyron, and let's see, this over here is
Norm Bragg.
Norm Bragg and
Mayor. J.D.
J.D.
Henson.
Henson, Tom Cox, Kitty Zephyr, Norma Mast,
Mickey Miller.
Mickey Miller,
David
David Rodich,
Rodich.
that's Mansfield. Oh, mercy,
I
first name
can't see that
Mansfield.
well.
I know it as well as my own first name,
The
Mansfield.
name's on the back.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Let's see here, which Mansfield is it? I know it as well as my own.
Don Mansfield.
Don
Had to be
Mansfield.
Don.
Oh, yeah.
And you
No, it's not Don
you
Mansfield,
must
that's
Siga.
Abrams. That's Abrams. That's Abrams, isn't it?
You must Siga.
And, oh yes, Maureen Siga. And that one right there is Tim Spoonster. And
Norma Mast is in there somewhere.
Norma Mast is the next one. Oh, Loa Gerbrich. Loa Gerbrich.
Loa Gerbrich,
for heaven's
right.
sakes.
Yeah, she's
That was our
been
sesquicentennial.
she's been in politics a long time.
Yeah, 20 years about. Now this one, this beautiful little old home. What is that?
Well, it wasn't a home. That was the old first Mennonite church built in the 1850s, I think, on Diagonal Road, which is right across. It's the road, Wadsworth Road,
Wadsworth Road.
across from the hospital. And the building was torn down, but the cemetery is still there.
And Ephraim Huntsberger was the minister there.
Reverend
Right.
Huntsberger was the minister.
This picture still stands, but not all of it still stands. This is the method of the Lutheran Church, Grace Lutheran. And what is the significance of this picture, Joe?
Well, they had a real ornate cement works. All this cement and all that fancy cement work has been removed, I think, because it started to crumble.
It was dangerous.
They replaced it, yes. It was a beautiful then, but
It still is a beautiful church.
It didn't weather well and
No.
it crumbled.
Our fire department had its own way of negotiating fires. We had pumpers, and we had
ladder truck.
ladder trucks. Is that what they call them?
Yeah, a ladder. Yeah, they had a 40-foot ladder and an 80-gallon tank that they had to pull them to the fire wherever they went to the fire. They had to run to the fire. They had no transportation, no horses to pull it or anything. They used to go out and run on weekends just to stay in shape, I think. And
I'm surprised we would not have had horses. Now, that building is where the old City Hall used to be, and that is now a
yes,
parking lot.
that's
One of the reasons that we tried to give the geographic locations, because we never know when something's going to become a parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
This was the Wadsworth Police Force in probably the 40s and very early 50s.
well, it had to be in the 50s because I didn't start working till the 51.
Okay.
So
There's Harv Weldy, and
does it say on the back?
no, it doesn't say on the back, and that one.
I can't see that far anymore.
Well, and Rod Lonier, Don D'Alessandro, Bob Welty,
Harlan Boehner.
Harlan Boehner, and Charlie Cole.
George Capitan is
George Capitan is in there too.
there in front. George got hurt trying to learn how to ride the city's motorcycle. City had a motorcycle
Right.
back in the 50s, and he ran it into a wall and hurt his back, so he retired early.
That was a nice looking group of young men. Mm-hmm. And this, of course, is the picture of the
First Christian Church.
First Christian Church.
And it had a parapet over the front of it so that people could unload from buggies, I guess, and not get wet. But
Oh, you mean
it had a canopy.
canopy over the front,
Canopy
so they
over
wouldn't
the
get
front
wet.
of it.
Mhm.
Yeah. No.
Oh boy, this one's an old timer
Yeah,
there.
that was the Wirtz Buggy Works, and it was on Mill Street. It's now a parking lot behind East of Chicago Pizza Place
Right.
and
West of Chicago.
West
West of east of Chicago, west of east of Chicago. Right.
West of Chicago.
On the west side of the east of Chicago pizza place, right.
But anyway, it was later used for plank elevator, but
Right.
then it was torn down, I suppose, in
And
the
now
60s.
it's a parking lot.
No, yeah.
These fellows, and I think that and there are several pictures of these kinds of people.
Yeah.
These are the
That's
ones.
the Wadsworth Imperials there. That was a sort of a semi-pro football team back in 1923, I think it was. But anyway, the only one I recognize in the whole thing is Bill Hutchinson, who is down here next to the last. And he was a mighty athlete. They were all big, husky people now.
Well, if they were as big as Bill Hutchison was.
Yeah, he was.
Oh, he was.
They claimed when he tried to crank his car, he picked the whole car up and shook the car while he was cranking his Ford.
This picture has a particular significance because there is a female. Tell us what it is, Joe.
Well, the lady there is a retired nun. She was selling for Summer Chevrolet.
Summer Chevrolet? Tony Perry Chevrolet.
Tony Perry Chevrolet, yeah. And that's the whole sales staff, of Summer. Tony Perry Chevrolet.
This would have been many, many years ago.
That was probably 20 years ago. Well, I think she's still there.
Is she?
Because she sold my daughter a car.
Sold your daughter a car.
And she was real happy with it.
We've had the picture of the Kreider Hotel, but this one is a particularly good one because it shows it in its entirety, and the entirety was devoid of any buildings anywhere around it. As we were growing up, there were buildings that came around the Kreider Hotel, but that was all by itself at one time, was it not?
That stood, well, I believe, they built the Senior Citizen Center later on after this, but they claim that the original one burned down and they built
the
another
second
one. Well, the first one was frame, and then they built a brick one, and then they tore it down for that's the Bachman Hotel there that stood where Brenneman's drugstore is, and then Kelly Johnson had his picket fence floral shop there. But
This is the Bachman Hotel.
yeah, Bachman Hotel, and the streetcar came down Broad Street here and into the square.
That's where Brenny's was.
That's where Brenneman's Pharmacy was, yes.
And then what about the National Hotel?
Well, are you with us? That's a tiny one, so that's a hard one to show. But anyway, yeah, he did a good job. The National Hotel stood where later on the sheep sheds were, and the Myers block is now on the
Northwest
corner.
In other
of
words, across
of
the street
square.
from the...
And the place caught fire and burned early one morning when they were building a fire in the kitchen to make breakfast. So I caught fire and burned.
We have here Hillier's Funeral Home, and those beautiful, beautiful horses with this beautiful carriage. And I don't recognize either of the two people, but I suspect that one of them has to be a Hilliard.
Before our time, that was
Right.
around 1900, I suppose. But they claimed that Hilliard's was down around the depot at that time.
At that time, they were down by the depot.
Yeah.
This picture we have talked about time and time again on the program. It's the house that's on L Street, and at this time it was vacant. But it was at one time the house that was a very prestigious house of one of the match shop greats, was it not?
He was an important businessman, and I can't recall his name anymore, but he had a very fine house. I think, it overlooked the match shop, so.
And it's torn down now.
He had something, but it was torn down. It was on the site of DH&L's storage area now.
Just a little bit west of it.
Yeah, Basco's, they bought it from Pete Basco, I think, at his coal yard.
Right.
Now, that place I don't remember at all, but they were competitors of Captain Wilbaugh's. Captain Wilbaugh was Wadsworth's photographer for 60 years, I think.
And these people were competitors.
And these people were competitors. It says open all day Sunday, and they had to be eager for
business.
For business,
because in those
because-
days you didn't open on Sunday
Yeah.
under any
Yeah,
circumstances.
because you weren't allowed to play baseball on Sunday, but you could. Now that's what's
This is John Farnsworth. We've talked about John Farnsworth and his
from Sharon
ox.
Center.
He has being driven by an ox. That's an
Yeah.
ox cart.
Yeah.
And those oxen were very, very strong. They had a horrible odor to them, but they were very strong. And this is John Farnsworth out in River Styx. We had one of his, I think that I'm right in saying that one of his grandchildren was here as a participant in the program.
Yeah, I'm sure Harold was probably
Yeah.
related to him, but I keep wondering how many miles they'd get on that ox's hoofs on the highway, because it had oxen. Well, but they went clear across the country.
They went
didn't
across
they?
the country, but they didn't have any highways.
Yeah, they didn't have.
They were on wood.
They didn't have horseshoes.
We had,
did they?
unfortunately, a tornado. They called it a cyclone, but it was probably a tornado, and it really
In Sharon Center.
Sharon Center and really devastated
cyclone.
the place.
Yeah, that was in the 1880s, I think.
Yeah,
And
April 8th, 1880, something.
Yeah.
That was a horrible.
Well, but back in those days, it wasn't built up, so all it tore up was trees and maybe
Trees,
a
right.
farmer's barn here and there.
Yeah. Now we
Now
have this picture.
that's the VFW, VFW membership back in around 1950, I think, 51, when I first started, I believe. But those are all the old, the fellow by the name of Hammer was the bartender in the center, but I can't remember his first name. They called him Baldy because
Baldy because he was
because
bald.
he was like the rest of us.
We have just any number of these kinds of pictures.
Yeah,
you
that
do.
one. That one was veterans from Civil War, I'm pretty sure, but I don't know, Memorial Day or something like that.
And that would have been in the very early 1900s.
It would have to be because those fellas were all dying off
Oh,
by
they surely
the
were.
early 1900s. There's another one of that.
Another one of the cyclone or the tornado that hit
Tornado up at Sharon Center. It went right across. It left the privy standing there, but either that or they must have put it back up on.
Doesn't make you wonder that a cyclone or a tornado can't knock the privy down, but Halloween kids can. This one has to have a lot of significance as far as the...
That one was Bob Days was a pilot in Wadsworth back in the 20s and 30s, early 30s. But anyway, they had in 1937, 38, I think it was, they had an airmail day, and they flew a bag of airmail from up in, they call it Colonial Heights there, that allotment, one of the first allotments in Wadsworth up on
north of
261,
right.
And east of 94, east of High Street. But anyway, they flew a bag of mail, and Bob Days flew the mail there.
This picture is of a noted Wadsworth person.
Dr. Johnson.
Dr. Johnson?
No, it isn't Johnson.
No.
No, I'm getting a mental blank. Whose hotel was it?
Kreider's, Dr. Kreider,
Dr. Kreider.
veterinarian.
He was a veterinarian. Yeah. And look at some of those old bottles there. You'd wonder, well, of course it was animals he was treating, but I'd sure hate to have him give me anything out of one of those dusty old bottles.
Dusty old bottles, Dr. Kreider. The hotel.
He had his, he was right alongside the Kreider Hotel.
Right behind
He
it.
had a huge barn behind, what would it be now?
Well, the Dimes Richmond building.
Yeah. He had a huge barn there, and Doc Moore had a sewing. He had a canvas awning shop there. Yeah, that's first streetcar coming into Wadsworth. I think there's a streetcar, but it shows the condition of the square there. It was nothing but pure mud. This is looking east on the square, and
what year do you think this might have been?
1907. That's when the streetcar came.
The first one came by.
And that was
this fella here.
Andy Harrington was
right.
Marshal back in.
He was the law.
Yeah.
He was the law, and boy, did he look like the law too.
Yeah.
They had the old English uniforms yet.
But they had to cover Wadsworth on foot. They didn't have any way to. I don't think he had a horse or anything. He might have used a buggy, but it would take him too long to harness up his horse.
Yes, he'd probably run faster than that. This actually is the old salt works, the Wadsworth Salt Works, not the Ohio Salt Works now, but the Wadsworth Salt Works.
It was the Wadsworth Salt Works on State Street.
And that's one that burned down.
And it burned down in 1928, I think it was. But anyway, they claimed they put out 800 barrels of salt a day in their prime.
We want a little explanation of that picture because it has...
Yeah, that's the west side of Main Street.
Of Main Street. And look at a couple of those old houses right there at the beginning of right there. That house stood there for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. And this one, Joe.
Oh, yeah. that was the street, Broad Street. You'd be standing probably where the Catholic Church is right about here. And it was looking down through there, and all the old houses, and the Catholic school would be down here on the corner of Humboldt. But anyway, it shows the condition of Broad Street back in, well, I don't know, I suppose early first decade of the 1900s.
Joe, we have another program right here, just with those pictures alone. We've come to the end of this hour, and we want to thank you once again, and I guess one of the biggest coups of my lifetime is to get you on this program at all because you're so shy. You used to be called Bashful Joe, was that right, in high school? That hasn't
That was
changed.
from Little Abner, I
From
think.
Little Abner. But you have never changed, and we're so grateful to you. So we will have you back again, starting with these pictures, because I don't know where you got them, but God bless you, you certainly have. You are contributing significantly to the preservation of our history in Wadsworth. Thanks again, Joe, and we certainly appreciate your willingness.
You're quite welcome. I enjoyed every minute of it, except I keep losing my voice.
That's all right. No problem.